Hi, Mr. Masters. We are CPA Team Consultants Inc., Team 18, and it was a pleasure looking at your business, Kreative Kasuals Inc. So for the agenda, we're going to start off with a qualitative analysis looking at strengths and weaknesses of your company. Then we're going to go right into your RCMP tender bid, as well as the ministry tender bid, and then some general comments and conclusions. For your strengths, you have quality, which is paramount to your operations. Your flexible workforce, which can ramp up production and wind down production fairly easily. Domestic operations are a huge benefit to government tenders because that's one thing governments are looking at, not only the lowest price. Additionally, your 15.11% increase in operating income from 2008 to 2009. Certainly, government tenders you're very unlikely to default on their payments. Additionally, you have excess capacity and therefore room to grow.
Now, certain weaknesses we found with your operations, Mr. Masters, is right now there's 90% of excess capacity that's not being utilized, and that 90% is derived from the 100,000 total maximum capacity per month. As well, with regards to capacity, the knitting machine right now is being used for only 30% of your operations, otherwise it's remaining idle, so that's not the best maximization again. As well, we understand that tenders are your primary source of revenue. However, there's other income revenue streams to be looking at, and we will highlight some of them for you later on. Externally, certain weaknesses we found with regards to your operations is there's currently one dye shop right now in Ontario. The general weakness for the economy right now is that the economy is in a downturn, the textiles industry is in decline. Due to the economic downturn and the decline, competition from your low-cost competitors has increased dramatically. With that being said, the direct low-cost competitors right now are China, India, and Pakistan with their exports, which translates into a 63.9% import of their product to us. So that's concerning, that's a threat for sure. As well, the total volume of exports and imports has declined. So again, it's just to show that the economy really isn't that great right now.
So bringing some of these concepts together, your strength, as tenders or short-term contracts come up, you have the capacity to accept them. Also, your flexible workforce maintains that your prices are extremely low when there's less demand, and you have the ability to ramp up production when there is demand. Some of your vulnerabilities, so this means an internal strength, but an external weakness. So your operating income is very good, but the industry is on a downturn. So that is potential vulnerability for your company. Additionally, your quality value-added proposition is more expensive, and right now the industry is highly competitive, reducing prices. One problem that is potentially there's no internal dye operations. We have to do it externally, and the external one is only one. Therefore, if they were to change prices or move jurisdictions or close, that would affect your t-shirt operations, which is 30% of your operations at the moment. Jumping right into the RCMP trouser tender, we've calculated your variable cost at $12 per unit. So that includes all of your labor and materials, etc. There's no incremental fixed cost, which means that you will have to pay the same utilities and same rent for your building, whether or not you got the tender or not, so therefore there's some costs. We use the markup for cost of goods sold to sales as at 142%, yielding a 17.14% bid price as the target. So just to reiterate, at $12 unit cost, your profit will be zero, but your loss will also be zero. Unit cost $17.14, your profit will be $146,000 for the initial unit amount.
Now, pros and cons for this RCMP tender, Mr. Masters. The main benefit for this tender is that it is a firm tender, so we know exactly how many units we'll be producing, which is 28,450 units. With regards to that, the key area that we'd like you to focus on in terms of benefits for this is that the costs and benefits for this entire tender are easily calculated and derived. There's a high degree of certainty that we face with this. As well, there's two additional options of volume production that the RCMP can exercise that are beneficial for us, as that will be capacity utilization as well as added revenue for us if they're exercised. Now, to just help you out with your production, what we decided or suggested for you to do is to take the 28,450 trousers and evenly produce them over the 5-month period leading up to December 31st, which means you'll be producing about 5,690 units per month. So there's less strain on your operations that way. As well, the only con we found for this particular tender is if the RCMP decides not to exercise those additional volume runs, then the capacity that you would reserve for those runs are not being utilized otherwise. So you could be losing revenue that you could otherwise, be saving up in anticipation if that volume run doesn't occur.
So now we go into the ministry tender for cargo pans. Now this one is slightly more complicated because we still have the variable costs, but in this case we have an incremental fixed cost. That means if we don't get the tender, we wouldn't have this increased utilities expense. So the inventoriable cost of goods sold is $12.44. Now, to include your $20,000 salary, it depends on how many units we sell, and it is $13.27 for 2,000 units and $12.94 for 3,000 units per month. Now, we are targeting with the $12.44 as is from this amount. Times 142%, which was the same markup we did for the other one, to yield a price of $17.77. Now, this is done in a very similar way with the variable costs, then we have the manufacturing overhead costs, and then we incorporate your salary. So this would be, if you got both tenders, your salary would be $40,000, which is great for taking the kids on vacation. And we have a target bid price of $10.10 for the cargo shorts.
Now, certain pros and cons we found for this particular ministry tender. First, we would like to highlight that this is an open tender, which means that there's no guarantee of volume and there's no exclusivity of you being the sole supplier to the ministry. So with that being said, certain benefits of this tender is that there is potential business for 2 years, as well as an additional 2 years of business, which translates into additional volume demand from the ministry for yourself. The other benefit that we like to highlight for this tender is that if no capacity is demanded from the ministry, then you'll incur absolutely no variable cost, as well as no incremental utilities cost per month of $312 per month. Cons we found for this particular tender is because it is an open tender, there's no guarantee of capacity. The $20,000 salary expense would be a loss if there's no capacity demanded from the ministry. You wouldn't be able to recoup that cost. As well, if you do win the tender, you do need to set aside production capacity just to ensure that if the ministry demands it, you have the ability to produce at their behest. So the opportunity cost of that is again something of concern, as it could be utilized otherwise if there's no capacity demanded. As well, with this one, there's a very high degree of uncertainty. So the cost benefits for this one are extremely difficult to determine. So that's a very huge area of concern for us. Certain key issues we just like to reiterate again is due to the industry decline, competition has increased substantially. However, your operations have remained very competitive. As well, you asked how to create other revenue streams. Well, the first key thing to look at is short-term clients can become long-term clients, and short-term clients cost very little to turn into long-term clients. So with that being said, to increase your revenues otherwise, try and convert all of your short-term clients, for example, the golf company, into long-term clients, and you'll be able to stabilize your revenue operations that way, and again, just incur a lot more stability in the operations.
So this is the very basic summation. So the RCMP washable trousers, we want you to sell it for $17.14, but make sure your bid price does not go below $12, as this would incur a loss per unit on fabric and labor. For these cargo pants and cargo shorts, this is the ideal price, although you're still not guaranteed a profit due to the fact of if it's really low volume, your $20,000 salary, which for each one would not be covered. Additionally, at higher revenues, you would get a lot more profit, but do not go below those two on the right because that would incur a loss per unit. Thank you, Mr. Masters, and it was a pleasure looking at your company.